Hello, Aubrey. How's it going today?
I'm great, Lindsay. How are you? All
Good, Aubrey. I have an important question here. You ready?
right, let's hear it. Yes.
So, Aubrey, what is the most typical predicament for students to be in or situation for them to be in when it comes to IELTS speaking?
Oh, I feel like so many of our students and our listeners are stuck at a 6, maybe even a 5.5, and they need
Mm-hmm.
a 7. So,
Yes.
figuring out how to increase that band point, right? How to push your score up to the score you need is probably the most common thing plaguing all students.
Yeah. And at that point, it's about understanding what the examiner is looking for just as much as it is about fluency, pronunciation, right? We can
Exactly.
learn these things within a matter of a few months, Aubrey. It can
Yeah,
be
because if
done.
you need to know what is expected in order to know what to work on. Absolutely.
Exactly. So before we go too much further into the episode, we do want to say a huge thank you to Jessica for her 10 years of service on IELTS Energy, the inspiration and the knowledge that we've gained from her about IELTS. Aubrey?
Absolutely, right? We are going to miss Jessica. If you guys missed her saying goodbye, go and check out episode number 1498 last week.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Go check out that episode, guys. And today, Aubrey, again, we have an inspiration from a listener question, right?
Yes, and this
What
is
did the listener ask?
reminiscent of a lot of questions we get from listeners. So we're going to read one from Aman who said,
Yes.
"For immigration, I need to get a speaking 7. I am stuck at 5.5. Help." We've gotten quite a few of these. We get it. It's so frustrating. And a lot of you out there listening are in the same boat. You know what that
Yes.
feels. You're getting on practice exams, or maybe you've taken the IELTS several times. You can't quite get
Mhm.
that 7 you need.
Yeah, and the good news is, yes, we can help. We can help you here, Amon, and any other student who is in that scenario. So, where do we want to start today, Aubrey?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what would make you score 5.5 in each scoring section and
Yep.
what you need to do in order to push that to a 7.
I love that. And was there another question that a student had that was related?
Yeah, so we do get questions about this a lot. I just saw one recently that was very similar, but about writing scores,
Yeah.
to how to get from 5.5 to 7. So
hmm
we're going to do sort of a two-part series here. So hit
hmm
follow, and we will answer the second part very soon about how to push your writing score up to a 7 or
Yes,
higher.
I love it. And that will be coming probably in the next couple of weeks, right, Aubrey?
Yes,
So make sure you
absolutely.
hit that follow button. So today we're all about speaking then. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So let's dive into the scores. We're first going to talk about the fluency and coherence score.
Okay.
Lindsay, what are students doing in order to score a 5.5
Yeah.
on this score?
Yeah, 5.5. So the examiner is hearing too much hesitation, too many pauses, too much or uhs, right?
Yes, exactly
Mhm.
right. Or you're hesitating, thinking before answering, trying to come
Yeah.
up with the perfect vocabulary. Those pauses are killing your
Mhm.
fluency and coherence score.
Yeah, and there are some very smart and strategic things you can do to fix this quite quickly, right? With practice. But once you have the strategy, you start practicing with that new strategy and you fix it. Okay.
Exactly, right? The other thing you might be doing is repeating ideas or
hmm
not enough detail. So you feel like you
Yeah.
haven't spoken long enough. You sort of start repeating what you've already said. This is
Yes.
also a killer for fluency and coherence scores. You have to,
hmm
everything you say has to be new information, right? You've got to
Mm.
think of something else. And once you've answered the question, you can go off topic. So let's dive
Yes.
into for this score, fluency and coherence. What do students need to do
Yeah.
to score a 7?
Yeah, it's like, what is the 7 solution, Aubrey, right? Where do we
Yeah.
start? Let us know. What can we
Okay.
do for the hesitation, the pauses, the ums, the uhs? What can
Yes,
we do?
because this is very fixable, but you have to target it, right? So
Mhm.
record yourself, first of all. And when you listen back, listen for pauses, ums, and don't record yourself reading something. Record
Mhm.
yourself answering, speaking questions and
Yes.
listen for those pauses. Identify so that you
Mhm.
are aware that this is a problem you have, that this is affecting your fluency score. And
Yeah.
then what can students do to practice this, Lindsay?
Well, practice the speaking aloud. I mean, I think a big part of where ums and ahs come up is that we kind of subconsciously feel unprepared. And so we feel like we're being put on the spot or we feel nervous. We don't feel confident. So when we've practiced a lot of different speaking practice questions, I think we're likely to take some of those ums and ahs out because we know we have something good to say. We know what we're doing. right?
Absolutely, right? The more confidence you have, the less you're going to be adding those uhs and ums, and the less you'll be pausing, hesitating, right?
Mhm.
So practice speaking aloud. Whenever you listen or read something in English, summarize it out loud.
Yes.
Answer IELTS speaking questions out loud. Find a speaking
Mhm.
partner. You need to be speaking out loud whenever you can.
Yes, and then there's a brilliant strategy, which I love, which I feel like, oh, I just love this strategy, right? So the problem is that we're hesitating and we're thinking before we're answering. What is the exact answer? What can we do right away to fix
Yeah,
this?
you need to use filler phrases. We have taught so many here on IELTS Energy. We teach a bunch of them in our course. You have to have something to say while you think of your answer. You can't just repeat back the question, and you can't just sit there in silence while you think. You have to say something right away. So here's an example. They ask you a question, your mind goes blank, you're not sure exactly what to say. You have these filler phrases memorized. You have practiced saying them so many times that you can say it while your brain thinks of something else. And you
Yes.
could say, "That's an interesting question. Believe it or not, I haven't thought about that, at least not recently.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think that," and all of that is filler where I'm
All of
buying
that is
time to think about what
mm,
I want to say.
it's so smart because all of that is replacing the
Or the
right?
silence, the
Or the
hesitation.
silence. But it's
Yes,
so smart because we already have this dialogue kind of going in our heads, right?
exactly.
What am I going to say? What should I say? Why not just articulate in better words than that what you're thinking, and that automatically increases that fluency score and possibly the vocabulary score, right, Aubrey?
Exactly. And it's not enough to just know you need filler phrases or,
Yes.
have read a few. You really have to practice this because that is a skill to
Mhm.
be able to say one thing well with interesting intonation while you're thinking, what is my opinion? How do I want to answer this? Trying to think of vocabulary. That
Yes.
it's possible, but you need to practice it.
Yeah, true, but and there's nothing stopping us from practicing this any time of the day. That's the brilliant thing. We don't need an IELTS teacher sitting in front of us to be able to practice this correctly. You can narrate your day as you go along. You're
Absolutely.
working through a tough problem, start narrating that out loud, or just in your head, but out loud, right? To yourself. That's the way to
Exactly.
practice. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, so if you do all of this, you can push that fluency and coherence score up to a 7. Let's dive in
Mm,
now to the
yes.
pronunciation score. Lindsay, what is happening when students are scoring a
Yes.
5.5 on
So
pronunciation?
monotone, Aubrey, right?
Yeah,
So a lack of intonation, everything feels like it's at the same tone, very monotone. Maybe we're making mistakes with phonemes and we're stressing words incorrectly, incorrect syllable stress. We're not enunciating.
exactly, right? Or maybe a lack of, yeah, like you said, we're not enunciating, a lack of
Yeah.
enunciation so that the
Hmm.
examiner's not sure what you said. Maybe you use this great vocabulary, but if your enunciation isn't clear,
Yeah.
they're not positive if the grammar was right, if the vocabulary is correct. So there
Hmm.
are very specific things you can do to push your score up to that 7.
Yes.
So let's dive
Hmm.
into
What
how
can we
or what
do?
you need to
Yeah.
do. Yes.
So, Aubrey, what can we do? I mean, there's something interesting here with adjectives. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes. So the easiest way to vary your tone, to have that variety of intonation that is vital to score 7 or higher, is to emphasize adjectives and
Wow.
adverbs, right? Interesting words. You cannot just say, like, I had a lot of fun on my last vacation in a monotone.
Right.
Instead, you could say, my last vacation was absolutely incredible. And you're just
Yes.
emphasizing those interesting words. You have to slow down to give them a little
Mhm.
space, and you're just punching them harder.
Yeah, and the adjective is really the opportunity, the adjective and the adverb, because that's where the life comes in. I mean, if you emphasize vacation, it's kind of weird,
Yes, exactly. I had a
right?
lot of fun on my last vacation.
Vacation. No, it's
No.
weird, right? It's not correct, right? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
So your opportunities are in the adjectives. Great. We should coin that term.
Yes, I
Uh,
love that. The
yeah.
opportunities are in the adjectives, nice.
Yeah. So
And
cool. So
then, of
that's really good.
course,
What
when it
else?
comes to word stress and, syllable stress and
Hmm.
phonemes, specific sounds, the best thing you can do is shadowing,
Yes.
mimicking,
Hmm.
where instead you don't want, like, lists of words and which syllable is stressed, you don't have time for that. That's not
Yes.
really going to help you. Instead, listen to 10 seconds of it at a time of
Yes.
native speech, someone who has interesting intonation and is
Hmm.
using correct word stress, syllable stress, and then repeat it back exactly how they said it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's not learn like we're in school. Let's learn like a child learns, right? A child just
Right?
hears the language and then understands which syllable is stressed. Okay. So let's learn that way. Love it.
Yes. And then another vital thing here is you really need to get feedback on which sounds you're producing incorrectly because often you don't hear it, right? Well, a lot of the
Hmm.
students we're working at will let them know the phonemes they're pronouncing incorrectly and they'll be shocked because
Mm.
it's different sounds in their first language. They're not hearing them when they make it. And sometimes even you'll do mimicking and it'll sound
Hmm.
the same when you're saying it and they're
Yeah.
saying it. So there are specific things you need to do. YouTube has a lot of great resources for this,
Hmm.
videos for specific phonemes, specific
Hmm.
sounds, and what your mouth and tongue should be doing to make those sounds.
Yeah. It exactly. And then sometimes you just do need to work with an IELTS expert, right? That's why, it just makes sense. And in our personal coach plan of 3 Keys IELTS, you submit your exercises into the coach, into Aubrey, and you directly give feedback, Aubrey, right? So that is someone to hear your mistakes and correct them. I love that.
Exactly. This is hugely helpful for our students. So I can point out specific phonemes that you need to target to work on and help you know how to do that. So a really
Hmm.
good example is the voiced TH sound, that the and the, this,
Yeah.
these, those, to talk about make sure you're sticking your tongue out between your teeth, vibrating sound, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
tricky and it takes a lot of practice to make sure you're clearly pronouncing those phonemes.
Yeah, so you can cut the time by having a coach, especially a coach that knows IELTS, help you with that. Good.
Absolutely.
Love it. Okay, Aubrey, we have two more categories, right? Two more, I believe.
Yes.
And what are they? What are
Yeah.
they?
So
What's the
first,
next one?
vocabulary. You might be getting a 5.5 if you don't have enough variety of your vocabulary, if you're using
Mhm.
common low scoring words or repeating vocabulary.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it's easy to get a 5.5, but this is also very not that hard to increase, right? Once you know what the
Mm.
examiner's looking for.
Yes, I love it. Are we talking about grammar or vocabulary? Hold on, I lost my place.
Vocabulary.
Okay,
Yes,
yes, vocabulary.
vocabulary. So let's talk about how you get a 7, right? You have
Yes.
got to learn slang, idioms,
Yes.
phrasal verbs, and then
Mhm.
practice using them when answering
Right.
speaking questions. You've
Mhm.
got to show variety in your
Yes.
vocabulary.
Yeah, I think a lot of students probably have a misconception that we need to be all formal all the time with vocabulary, but it's not true, right, Aubrey?
Exactly. Part 1 of the speaking section, they're asking questions a friend would ask. So you are
Yeah.
expected to answer informally. Use
Yeah.
slang, idioms, phrasal verbs. Part 2 also, if you're describing a party, you should be using pretty informal vocabulary.
Yeah, very good point. You're not going to answer in a formal manner to your friend that just asked you about,
What do you do on the
your
weekends?
home or your neighborhood or
Yes.
something. Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah.
Exactly. But you do also need that topic specific high scoring vocabulary, right? For speaking part 3 and sometimes in part 2 as well. So read sections of the newspaper, listen to
Mhm.
podcasts that cover the economy, business, environment, technology, because you have got to learn that vocabulary as well and then practice using it.
Yeah, we always say the societal topics, right? About society
Yes.
largely. Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. And then it's
Okay.
vital that as you're answering, you're avoiding repeating vocabulary. So say something new, or a lot of students will just sort of keep talking. They feel like they haven't spoken enough. If you have said 3 to 5 sentences, you've
Mhm.
spoken long enough. You can end
Okay.
your answer and let them ask
Mm.
another one.
Nice. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Excellent. So that is how we move our vocabulary score from a 5.5 to a 7. Now, grammar, the last thing that the examiner is looking at. What can
Yes,
we
the
do
good
here?
news is you can make a lot of grammar mistakes and still score a 6. A
Hmm.
7 is hard. You really can only make a few mistakes to score a 7,
Mm.
and you have to be using a variety of sentence structures. This does not mean that you have to use every verb tense. You don't have to use, past perfect and all of these. No, you just need
Mm.
to use a combination of simple, compound, and complex sentences, but
Yeah.
with minimal mistakes, right? So you do need to be thinking about grammar, but a lot of students make the mistake of spending too much time
Yes.
trying to improve their grammar score when these other 3 scores are much quicker to increase.
Oh, that's so important to know, Aubrey. I mean, a lot of students do make that mistake because they think, oh, I got to improve my grammar. So I'm going to go to the back of my textbook, look at all those ridiculous charts, right, that we used to have in our
Right.
textbooks and just memorize them. That is not going to get, you could spend hours. That's not going to bump your score up, right?
Right. It can take up to a year to move from a 6 to a 7 on
Mm,
the IELTS grammar score for both writing and speaking. But if
yeah.
you need an overall 7, if you can get an 8 in these other sections, you can still score a 6 for grammar and get your overall 7.
That is so strategic. I love that way of thinking. This is about your overall score. It's not
Right.
about any individual score. So if we can compensate for in one area with another, it's so smart.
Exactly. Use your time wisely. Score an 8 in these other
Mhm.
sections. And then, don't spend hours and days racking your brain about grammar.
Aubrey, anything else we need to know on how to get that 7 in grammar?
Yeah, so we just want to share an episode we recorded 857 when
Mhm.
grammar matters, transitions and compound sentences in IELTS writing. We gave a
Mm.
lot of details on creating compound and complex sentences because this is really a pro tip that variety of grammar structures you need to score a 7 that is satisfied if you have not just simple sentences but also compound sentences and complex sentences that are created correctly. So don't miss that episode for details.
Yeah, so good. And guys, don't forget all of this advice, all of this knowledge is based on examiner experience. So you know that you can trust what we're saying here. It's not based on teachers that are disconnected from the exam. This is based on the actual examiner's experience. All right, good stuff.
Exactly. Yes, it's
Yes.
very possible to get a 7 on IELTS speaking. Use these strategies. We're
Mhm.
excited for you to get the score you need on IELTS.
Aubrey, anything else we should leave our listeners with as a final takeaway? For me, it's be strategic, be smart when you
Yes.
prepare, right?
Yes, right? Be smart with how you're using your time and don't get discouraged. You are not alone. If you have scored a 5 or a 6 multiple times on IELTS or on practice speaking mock speaking tests, that's what you're getting, right? A
Yeah.
lot of students are in that same boat, but there's a lot that you can do. So don't lose motivation.
Excellent. Good stuff, Aubrey. I'll see you back here on the podcast very soon. Have a good day.
You too. See you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.